Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. And, of course, you good old boys in Africa, thank you for following Big C Sports from the Big C Tribe. You know we love you up in Canada, but Big C, there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south, in the land of the free, and the home of the brave. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, some of us are going to have to take a secession from the South down here with some of the political things that are going on.
Yeah.
You know, ironically, we had the president endorse an alleged child molester.
What a joke.
Today, you know, down in Alabama, and saying, you know, that this is the type of person that the country needs to lead the country. Charlton, when we look at all the upheaval that has occurred throughout the media in the past couple of months, past several months really, starting with Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ayers at Fox being dismissed for sexual improper allegations and stuff, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here's Roy Moore, not dealing with adults, but dealing with minors.
Yeah, it's the same.
This is a sexual predator, Charlton.
Yeah.
And we got Americans saying that it's okay, and this is the type of person that we want making legislative laws for us in this country. You know, this is appalling to be in the South, Charlton, and this is being accepted right now.
Yeah, that's a really shame. Today is a beautiful December the 4th, 2017, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And with all of the things that go on in this country, and we've been talking about how do we end sexual assault, and you just talked about all of the brave women who finally come forward and said, this is what happened to me, and we want to put an end to it. And of all people, the President of the United States of America says it's okay because we're going to cut your taxes. It's okay if you're sexually assaulted. We're going to call you a liar, and we're going to cut taxes. Big C, what in the world are the good old boys? How can anyone, no matter you're Democrat or Republican, how can they stand up and try to get a guy in office who's been assaulting 14-year-old girls? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's the most appalling part about the Republican Party right now is what they're standing for. You know, they had no problem coming out against Al Franken and John Conyers.
No.
For us talking about that they should resign, but yet they're trying to elect someone who is not dealing with adults, who are dealing with minor children, Charlton.
Yeah.
And even the president's daughter spoke out about this individual, saying that there was a place in hell for him, which I hopefully, you know, they got some pillows down there for him, Charlton.
Yeah.
And where he can sleep face down and back up.
Yep.
You know,
I understand.
But, you know, this is a scenario, Charlton, that, you know, this is what our country has been loath to since the current administration has been put into the office.
Yeah.
You know, you brag about grappling women, Charlton, and saying this is acceptable and they wanted you to do this. And we know that this has been a culture in politics for years, that the powerful could crush the less elite, Charlton, and it's gone on. But here it is that you're talking about, you know, a guy with a predatory past, Charlton. We saw what happened at Penn State with Jerry Sandusky in his predatory ways. And yet you're not talking about criminalizing a person. You're talking about embracing him and you know, raising him up on a plateau as an elected official with his checkered past. And, you know, whether you're looking at sports or whether you're looking at just straight politics, Charlton, there's nowhere, you know, in the world for this to occur. I mean, we had a defensive back, Sharper, who was convicted in 15 years in prison for rape of women.
Yeah.
From the NFL All-Pro defensive back with the Saints, Vikings, and the Packers and stuff, Charlton. And so he's gotten a 15-year sentence. And so here it is that, you know, here's an individual, and even Bill Cosby, the great comedian and actor, Charlton, you know, has been put on trial.
Yeah.
But there seems to be some abstain from prosecuting these white politicians, Charlton.
Yeah.
That, you know, you're getting a pass. Well, we can't believe these women. They're not credible. And even a step further, Charlton, the swimmer out of Stanford that was convicted over a year ago for rape on campus in Charlton, his attorneys have just filed an appeal on his conviction.
Oh, really?
Saying that, you know, yes, they want it overturned. And, you know, here it is. He was caught in the act by two fellow students who held him until the police could show up, Charlton.
Wow.
They had the DNA evidence and everything else that he had sexually attacked this female who was unconscious.
Wow.
And he was convicted. And the judge, they up for a recall on the judge trying to get him recalled because he gave him such a light sentence. And now his attorneys are appealing his sentence, Charlton, and his conviction, saying that he was unfairly prosecuted, Charlton.
That's a crazy world we live in, Big C. I do want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them that Big C sent you. So everyone who says, for all of the kneeling that took place for NFL athletes for the national anthem, and Donald Trump said, fire the SOBs, here's a guy that says, fire the black guys who are standing for civil justice and equal rights and protection under the law, but put a white pedophile in office. It just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of sickening, especially if you're a woman and you're thinking, should I come forward? Should I write a letter to the president about what happened? We know he has like 17 sexual assault allegations against him too. So that's going to be for the powers that be. But for all of the people who have any amount of decency, is it that important that we call 14-year-old girls liar because this white guy has power? And again, it's just good old boy politics. It's been going on for centuries, Big C. So hopefully we can put a stop to that. I do want to touch real quick, though. I know we had a lot of big things happen over the weekend in the world of college football and some great games and also some blowout games. But I want to get back to that Stanford game against USC. That was Friday, the Pac-12 championship. And I still heard that the USC coach, after the game, they were asking if he had any thoughts about what USC have a chance to get into the Final Four. And, of course, he has to kind of, vote for his own team. But I think what we have is a good matchup in USC versus Ohio State. That's going to be played. That game's going to be played actually in the Cotton Bowl down in Texas. Just give me your thoughts on that matchup and what it all means, Big C. Your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, you get two contrasting styles of team play, when you look at it from an offensive perspective.
Yep.
You have that West Coast versus that Midwest style football, Charlton.
Yeah.
And where Ohio State is more of a grounded-out team, but this is a team that's blessed with a lot of speed also, Charlton, when you look at the receiver position.
Yeah.
For Ohio State, they came in with a couple freshmen.
Yep.
Playing receiver at the beginning of the season, but those guys have matured. J.T. Barrett has played phenomenal football in his 5 years at Ohio State. You think about what he has done to this program, Charlton, to take it to new heights.
Yeah.
But I also think the selection committee, when they omitted Ohio State from the process after dominating Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, look at Ohio State's resume from last year, where they did not score any points in the championship game. Charlton. They got shut out.
So did Michigan State.
And so when you look at the Big Ten, as far as saying, hey, we deserve to be in there, their resume does not bode well, Charlton, for what they have done since they've been in the Bowl Championship Series. You look at SC, this is a team that plays a tough non-conference schedule all year long. And so that really is what you look at when your bowl committee is selecting teams. They talk about strength of schedule, quality of wins, Charlton. Every win is a quality win, whether it's by 1 point, whether it's by 40 points. It's a quality win because at the end of the year, we're all looking at the W's and the L's.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You think about the power of the conference that they play in, Charlton. How many teams did they play in that conference that were ranked?
Yeah.
You had Washington State, Stanford, that were ranked in their conference, nationally. So it wasn't like they had a weak schedule. Plus, they had a couple other teams that, boded well. That game against UCLA was a very strong game. So this is one of those games that teams from the Big Ten are not accustomed to seeing teams from the Pac-12, Charlton.
No.
Is that they throw the football. That's Ohio State's Achilles heel, is a team that can throw the football. If you look at what Iowa did to them, Iowa threw the ball, Charlton, very successfully. And so they've had problems with that. Oklahoma, when they trounced Ohio State early in the year, they threw the football very well. So I give USC the advantage in this game, Charlton, just because they have the ability to throw. They have so many weapons. When you think about the offensive weapons, what they possess is equal to what Oklahoma possesses. And that same type of skill set. Mayfield is a more athletic quarterback than Donald. But Donald has enough athleticism to avoid the rush of Ohio State, Charlton.
Good point, Big C. The Wisconsin-Miami game, we're going to get them in the Orange Bowl, and Miami really has laid an egg. I don't know if it laid an egg against Clemson or not because they had some missing receivers. They were banged up. But this is a team that was just 2 weeks ago. They had their eyes set on a national championship and repeating as that type of Miami from back in the day when they were always competing for a national championship. Wisconsin, they really didn't play as well as the score looked. I mean, they lost a close game to Ohio State by the score of 27-21. But when you had a couple of those touchdowns that Wisconsin scored, they came off our turnovers. It's not like they drove the ball down the field. So Ohio State, really, to me, they won that game by, it looks like, at least 2 touchdowns, maybe even 2.5. But give me your thoughts on Wisconsin with their defense playing against Miami, that for some reason they can't seem to find all their talent anymore, and their swagger is gone after they beat Notre Dame. Big C, your thoughts?
But also back to that Wisconsin-Ohio State game, Charlton, if you look at it, they had 2 50-plus yard touchdowns on missed tackles by defensive backs.
Yeah.
So they really didn't dominate by moving the ball up and down the field. I know they were offensive touchdowns, but they didn't. And you know, defense is part of what wins championship.
Yeah.
And it held Wisconsin in that game.
Yeah.
But when you think about Miami has not been an explosive team all year long.
No.
They have been predicated on what they did defensively. That's the reason for the turnover chain.
Yeah.
Because in all of their victories this year, Charlton, they had 3+ turnovers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
They didn't get that in their 2 losses.
No.
And so they were held in check defensively. And if their defense is not playing, their offense hasn't been dominant enough, Charlton, to go out and just win games on their own. And we've seen that in their 2 losses that they've had this year against Pittsburgh and Clemson.
And Clemson, yeah.
So this is a game I actually give the advantage to Wisconsin in this game, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because they're a very physical team. The ACC is not used to playing that type of physical football all the time, where you saw Clemson play that physical football against Miami.
Yeah.
And that's what Wisconsin is going to come in and do, Charlton. They got one of the top 3 rushers in the country, and they plan on pounding it down the throats of the Hurricane.
Well, another fantastic matchup, but we have the Penn State Nittany Lions versus the Washington Huskies. We know that Washington can throw the football with Jake Browning and Peterson, the great coach. You look at Franklin at Penn State and the way they like to run the football, a contrasting styles. But here we are seeing the Pac-12 and USC Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl down in Texas. Historically, that's been Woody Hayes territory and John McKay territory where they play in the Coliseum. Now you have Penn State against Washington. I think of Joe Paterno from back in the day and Don James up with the Huskies, and they always met at the Rose Bowl. Now they're going to meet in the Fiesta Bowl, still on the West Coast down in Arizona. But your thoughts on those contrasting styles? Penn State thought they could have been in last year. This year they get knocked off by Ohio State. Washington was in it last year, but one loss, and that was that loss that they had down at Arizona, which really kept them out of the national championship picture. Your thoughts on Penn State versus Washington?
Well, Charlton, I think the last time Penn State played in the Fiesta Bowl would have been around '96, and they won a national championship.
Yeah.
You know, under the late Joe Paterno. But this is the team, when you think about O'Connell at quarterback and what he did last year in the Rose Bowl, coming out to the West Coast throwing the ball in pristine condition in January, Charlton. This is a kid who can light it up offensively. Saquon Barkley fell off that Heisman race about a month ago, Charlton, where he fell out of all consideration because his yards were no longer accumulating in Heisman-type numbers.
Yep.
But this is a game that Penn State gets up for. You think about a program that was down 4 or 5 years ago, Charlton, who had no bowl aspirations, and were living from the heinous events that they had nothing to do with as players.
Yeah.
But they've recovered under Franklin, and they become a dominant team. They showed well for the Big Ten last year in the Rose Bowl in that lightning round match against USC, where it was a track meet. I see them coming out with that same vigor again this year, Charlton, and having a New Year's Bowl game against something that Penn State historically had been accustomed to playing in. And these players are looking forward to that. They didn't get the Big Ten title again this year, but they can go out as winners in winning this game.
Very good point, Big C. A huge matchup, Auburn out of the SEC versus Central Florida. Now, Central Florida, Frost is going back to Nebraska, where he always wanted to be. I know he was on the staff up at Oregon for a time, learned how to have a speedy offense, and had the only undefeated team that people never really talked about. They talked about Wisconsin, but this team, when you look at them, offensively, 62-55 win over number 14th ranked Memphis. Now, they can score a lot of points. They remind me a lot of Oklahoma State, but defensively, they're kind of a liability against a big physical Auburn team. Just your thoughts on that contrasting style of Central Florida versus Auburn. And Central Florida knows that their coach is already headed to Nebraska. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that championship game between Central Florida and Memphis was the highest scoring championship game in NCAA history. So, they can put points on the scoreboard, but you can't say that they're not a strong defensive team because they were playing against a team who had the same equal offensive firepower. They could throw the football. Now, this is something something that they're not going to face in this game, somebody who can throw the ball like they can.
Yeah.
And so I look at Frost, and his players are going to want to let him go on a high note.
Yeah.
He had brought them from obscurity 2 years ago, 0-12, to this year, Charlton, being undefeated, one of only two undefeated teams, the only undefeated team left in the country.
Yeah.
And so that bodes well. You know, when you think about players and tenacity and legacy, you want to leave something that no one else can do. They could end the season, Charlton, after the bowl run, being the only undefeated team left.
Yeah.
And that speaks volume. That's something that you'll always tell your grandkids, your kids. We were the only undefeated team in the country, and we didn't get invited.
Didn't get invited to the granddaddy of the dancers, Big C. I want to touch on the Final Four now. And if you think about the beginning of the season, you know how they say rankings don't matter, but rankings can be pretty accurate outside of Georgia. If you think about number 1 Clemson, get the number 1 seed, they're going to play number 4 Alabama. I want to get your thoughts later on how that happened. And then you have number 2 Oklahoma, which has always been suspect on defense, at least half of their games have. They're playing against number 3 Georgia, which has been very dominant outside of the loss that they had at Auburn, but they amended that loss. So number 1, let me touch on number 3 Georgia versus number 2 Oklahoma, and that game's going to be in Pasadena. I mean, it's almost like the alternative facts, Big C, when the good old boys from the South are playing in Pasadena, and you got Pac-12 Big Ten teams playing in Texas. Your thoughts on Georgia and how they stack up against Oklahoma and that great passing attack they have for the Sooners?
Well, Charlton, the Sooners have a tremendous passing attack, but will Baker Mayfield have
the time?
The time, will he have a hangover?
Yeah.
All the award ceremonies that he's going to be attending.
Yeah.
And we've seen this in the past with Heisman Trophy winners. Think about Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
You know, on his run, Charlton.
Yeah.
When he had the hangover.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, this happens with quarterbacks. I mean, last year, not Bridgewater, but the kid at Jackson didn't play well from Louisville.
Yeah.
After his, run of the award shows, Charlton. And so this is something that Oklahoma has to protect against.
Yep.
Will Baker Mayfield be ready to play? Now, Georgia has this tremendous defense, Charlton, and their running game had gotten a little nicked up when they played Auburn.
Yep.
But everybody's back and healthy. Chubb, ended up the number 2 all-time rusher in SEC history.
Yep.
So he and Michelle will be back. The quarterback Fromm has grown up, Charlton, in front of everybody's eyes over the past 2 months.
Yeah.
And so now they're unleashing him on offense and letting him throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
But, Georgia has a tremendous pass rush.
Yep.
That's something that maybe Oklahoma hasn't seen all year, the type of pass rush that's going to come. But neither have they seen the type of quarterback that Mayfield is.
Yeah.
You think about it, Charlton. If Baker Mayfield goes on and wins the Heisman Trophy, he'll only be the second transfer quarterback in the history of that prestigious award to have started at one school and gone on to another school and win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, very good point, Big C. Before I bring you to Alabama, Clemson, that was pretty much the talk. And you talked about it, so I want to give you kudos again. You said Alabama would get in as soon as they were stationed at number 5 last week. And so you look at all the talk about should it have been a team like Ohio State. And when you look at their point totals and losses, you talk about quality wins and quality losses. When your point total and losses, I think they lost by 31 to Iowa and 15 to Oklahoma. So you're talking about a team that lost by 46 points in just 2 games. One at home at the Big House and the other on the road at Iowa. It's hard to justify, we lost by 46 points, but we're good enough to play for the national championship, especially Iowa's they're not even in the talk of being in the top 15, let alone the top 6 program, Big C. And so give me your thoughts on the trilogy rematch with Clemson and then Alabama. We know Clemson got them because they beat everybody up, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it is a trilogy that the media wanted, but I still am reserved about this, Charlton.
Yeah.
You just talked about the point differential and losses.
Yeah.
Wisconsin lost one game this year by 6 points. Okay.
Yeah.
6 points, and they lost to a top-ranked team. They lost to a top 8 team. That's the only loss that they had.
Yeah.
Nobody else, Charlton, that's in the top 4 can say that they lost to a top 8 team and made the Final Four.
Yeah.
So they still have an argument. But, the bowl committee, as they figure, they got it right.
Yeah.
But, I look at this scenario. Clemson has the better defense. Alabama still beat up defensively.
Yeah.
And you look at Alabama's last game. They have a problem against throwing quarterbacks. Jared Stidham was able to throw the ball against Alabama, which has been their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And so Kelly Bryant is a guy who can push the ball down the field. We know that Clemson has tremendous team speed.
Oh, yeah.
You think about the first 2 games over the last 2 years that these teams have played against each other, Charlton.
Yep.
It's been an uncanny amount of offense by Clemson. You know, Deshaun Watson, each of those games, Charlton accounted for close to 500 yards of offense in each one of those games.
Yeah.
So, you know, Kelly Bryant is not too far from him. But a supporting cast, Charlton, will make a huge difference. If they can make Hurd uncomfortable in the pocket, Charlton, this will be lights out for Clemson in the trilogy, and they'll get this a 2 out of 3.
Big C, I want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer leagues, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you, and call 800-772-8624. That is 800-772-8624. Before we touch on the NFL, just want to get your thoughts again in about a minute. Does it make sense to have the Heisman Trophy already presented before the final games are played? For example, you saw what Vince Young did in the Rose Bowl. It was Vince Young at Texas. USC had that good old boy Reggie Bush, and we've had Matt Leinart win it before. We've had so many players that won it before they even played in a national championship game. You look at Watson last year. Had they waited until the final game was over, Watson would have won the Heisman Trophy and not Jackson, just my opinion. Is it a good thing that they wait, that they do it before the final games, or do they do it after the final game so we can really see who's the best player? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I even go back further. Several years ago when Leinart was playing at USC and Sean White was playing at Oklahoma and won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
And, you know, they got demolished in the Orange Bowl by USC.
55-19. Yeah, 55-19.
And so when you talk about the best player in the country, Charlton, the Heisman is supposed to go to like the NFL MVP, it's supposed to go to the most valuable player on the team.
Yep.
And, you know, you say the best player in the country.
Yeah.
What is the best player in the country? It's about where you can get media votes at.
Yeah.
Who has the most marquee games on the slate? That's what it comes down to, because Bryce Love, you're going to tell me he wasn't valuable out there at Stanford?
He was amazing.
Running hurt all year long with an ankle injury, Charlton?
Yeah.
And amassing the yards that he amassed?
Yeah, he's amazing.
On a team that challenged for their conference championship? So, you know, it's not always given to the best player in the country. It's given to that one player that's exposed the most as far as what you do. Even Lamar Jackson has better stats this year at Louisville playing quarterback than what he had last year in winning the Heisman.
Yeah.
But he's not even in consideration. They may invite 3 players to New York, and Mayfield's going to win it. Jackson may go because, you know, he won last year.
Yeah.
And Love may show up just because he led the nation in rushing.
Yeah.
But, you know, you even look at the freshman running back at Wisconsin, how dominant a season he had, and he started on the 3rd string with that team, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we look at this Heisman, you know, it's a very partial vote, you know, when it comes out.
Yeah.
But, you know, when it's given out before all is said and done, it's like many other awards. You know, the NBA, they give out the MVP before the championship series is over.
Yeah.
And many other things, Charlton. So, you know, we got to look at these award programs and ceremonies and say, are they constructive or unconstructive as far as the rest of the playoff series go?
Yeah, I think sometimes if you look at NASCAR down there where you live, Big C, they usually give out the trophy after that good old boy crosses the finish line first.
After
the finish line cross, then they give out the trophy. I want to touch on the NFL in about the next 30 minutes, Big C. I look at the Vikings and the Falcons in a big game Sunday on Fox Sports. Kevin Burkhardt, Charles Davis, and Pam Oliver had the play-by-play. And I'm looking at this Vikings defense. How do you go into Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and only give up 9 points? The Vikings, I thought it's like they played like the Purple People Eaters, Big C. Your thoughts on the Vikings win in Atlanta?
Well, we know that the Vikings were a predatory species of people, Charlton, and they did eat a lot of birds.
Yeah.
And they came into the dirty bird country, and I don't know if they
the dirty bird, the dirty bird South, right? That's funny.
They are a formidable opponent right now, Charlton. When you start talking about the best teams in the NFL, And you see what the Vikings are doing with Case Keenum, Charlton. They have such a tremendous defense.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're at the point right now, and Mike Zimmer said, if you give me 21 points, we won't lose.
Yeah.
They only needed 14 in Atlanta because they didn't give up a touchdown, Charlton. They reminded me right now of that first Baltimore team that went to the Super Bowl and won it.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 90s, Charlton, when they beat up on the New York Giants.
Yeah.
And all they needed was a touchdown, and Shannon Sharp scored a touchdown in the playoffs versus the Raiders.
Yeah.
It's like, good night, Irene.
And Trent Dilfer, of all people, has a Super Bowl championship, and Matt Ryan does not. Does that make any sense, Big C?
Well, you know, it doesn't always help to be a formidable quarterback.
Yeah.
Sometimes just being a stand-in works.
That's true. Speaking of being a stand-in, the Titans 24-13 over the Texans, and Mariota looks good. That game was Sunday on CBS Sports. Greg Gumbel, Trent Green, and Jamie Erdahl had the play-by-play. I'll think about the Titans, how the Raiders beat them earlier in the year. And now they're on top at 8-4 in their division. They look very strong against the Texans, who were really depleted, but I really like the way the Titans are playing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, the Texans are depleted. They've been depleted for the past couple of years. Their quarterback questions are their biggest woes of the team. Defensively, Charlton, you can't sit out there and play every down and hope to stop somebody who has an offensive attack. And that's what they're calling on with the Texans every week. As a defensive player, you can't be all that confident in your offense that they're going to go out and score enough points to keep you in the game. And that's what they've seen with Savage week in and week out. A guy at quarterback who seems not to have any confidence about himself. You know, he's trying to throw the ball, but he's just not getting it done. He lacks the mobility. When that offense had Deshaun Watson, Charlton, in there, they were night and day.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, they're all just night. Everybody's asleep.
Yeah, that's true. They like sleeping, Big C. Nothing wrong with that. I look at the Chiefs. Talking about being asleep, the Jets go to 5-7 on the season with a 38-31 win over the Chiefs, who are now 6-6. And that game was Sunday on CBS Sports. Iron Eagle, the great Dan Faust, and even Washburn had the play-by-play. But just give me your thoughts. Has Andy Reid lost the Kansas City Chiefs when you have players picking up a flag and throwing it into the stands when you know that's going to get you at least a 15-yard penalty, Big C? Teams that are playing for a playoff, they don't play that way. Has Andy Reid lost control of his team, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think a couple of injuries lost control of the Kansas City Chiefs. You think about when they lost to Eric Berry. That was the first big hit they did, Charlton. Then they lost to linebacker Johnson. That was another big hit that they took defensively. And so that core leadership was gone from their defense. A lot of people don't realize they lost Dontarius Poe, the defensive tackle, who was an anchor in the middle. He's in Atlanta now. And so you lost 3 tiers of your defense, Charlton, from last year. Offensively, they came out and scored. People have figured out what they do offensively. But you think about it. The Chiefs scored over 30 points in this game against the Jets. Still lost.
And still lost.
So the problem hasn't been on offense. The problem was on the defense. When you score over 30 points and you lose in the NFL, you have to look on that defensive side of the ball. So Andy Reid has been known as an offensive coach. You know, and we've seen defensive coordinators get fired for giving up less points than 35, okay?
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Big C. That does happen in the game. I look at the Dolphins. I thought it was a typo. The Dolphins 35, the Broncos 9. How far have the Broncos fallen? They are now 3-9. The Dolphins go to 5-7. That game was Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS Sports with the great Dick Stockton, Mark Schlereth, and Shannon Spake, the play-by-play. It seemed like the Broncos are giving up. Has John Elway lost control of the Denver Broncos? I mean, they were just in the Super Bowl, Big C, 2 years ago, Big C. Your thoughts?
Maybe he's tilting his head back too far, looking to the bottom of the glass right now, Charlton. You know, but John Elway, as we've seen many times in sports, just because you can play a position don't mean that you can choose a position. Just player, Charlton. And that's where his ineptitude has been. He got fortunate because he was able to bring in Peyton Manning. So there was no work that needed to be done with Peyton Manning. He was just sit back, shut up, and go for the ride, okay?
That's true.
Since then, you know, when they installed your boy Brock Osweiler last year when Peyton was hurt 2 years ago, you know, that went awry. Then all of a sudden, they got rid of Osweiler, and they tried with a couple other kids, Lynch and Simeon, and it just hasn't worked. They brought in Osweiler again. They kept thinking, once again, just like we said earlier about Houston, Charlton, Houston's defense not having any confidence in that offense. That's the same thing in Denver. Is that you play defense. but you get tired. You took that defense that's used to being in the cold down to the humidity of Miami, Charlton.
Yeah.
They just got worn out.
Yeah.
But they're also mentally frustrated because this offense, they know when they go out, they're going to be lucky to get 14 points out of their offense.
That's
lucky.
true. That's true.
And that's been for the past month and a half.
Yeah.
They're lucky to get 14 points out of their offense. And as a defensive player in the NFL, you know that opposing offense is paid also.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. And you look at Aqib Talib not being there, and maybe that chemistry's gone with that team. It's like they've already melded in. But they are up in Mile High territory where everybody tends to play relaxed on Sunday. Big C. I look at the Jaguars. They go to 8-4 with a 30-10 thumping of the Colts, who are now 3-9. That game was Sunday at 1 o'clock on CBS Sports. Kevin Harlan and Rich Gannon had the play-by-play. The Jaguars' defense is a very solid defense, and I know when they went overseas and played in London in the first part of the season, Big C, a lot of people saw they had a shutout win. That defense can really carry them into the playoffs. I don't think they're good enough to get to the championship game, but I would not be surprised if they knocked off somebody in the first round. Big C, your thoughts?
Dalton, that defense is a beast, and when you get to the playoffs, that's what you need is a formidable defense.
Yeah.
The Colts they're not the greatest offensive team in the NFL. They're learning how to play the game, Charlton, with a new quarterback.
Yeah.
But Chuck Pagano, he's had to call the moving company already and say, hey, guys, I only got 4 weeks left. So you can get this stuff back up.
Get it now,
this is a scenario that, Coughlin and Marino, Doug Maroney, rather, have gone down to Jacksonville and stabilize his franchise. There is some consideration. This might be the home for Eli Manning next year because the Giants are going to be in a total reclamation project. And he would be a perfect fit down there, Charlton. Blake Bortles is just a game manager. It really lets you know how strong the running game is in Jacksonville. If you go back to Coughlin's early days with the Giants when he came in, he instilled a solid running game, Charlton, with those players that he had. He had the big backs down there. He had Marshall and Jacobs, Charlton, and they dominated and won a couple of Super Bowls. He's done that same thing. Play great defense, have a running game, and Jacksonville has responded, being 8-4 this year, Charlton.
Yeah, they look very, very good. I look at another team, the Packers, at now 6-6. There's talk of, will Aaron Rodgers come back? Not if you want him long term, but you never know what happens when people get a little bit of happiness in their system from winning a couple games. A 26-20 win over the Buccaneers, who fall to 4-8. That game was Sunday on Fox Sports. Tim Brando, Greg Jennings, and Jennifer Hale had the play-by-play. Now, I know he's nowhere near a Rodgers, but they both played in the Pac-12 conference, so they know how to read defenses at least. Now, here's a guy that was not expected to even play at all this season, but I'm telling you, the Packers are winning some games with him under the helm. I'm not saying he's going to be their future, but he definitely is their present right now. Your thoughts on the big win by Green Bay?
Charlton, Huntley's lucky to get through the weekend. You think about it. It was another game that he failed to pass for 100 yards. I believe 71 yards passing that he had in this game, Charlton, over the weekend. So that's not NFL standard. I know he's not the worst quarterback in NFL, but he's going to have to improve a lot over what he's done, Charlton, if he expects to stay a backup in this league and even challenge for a starting position someday. He got to be a little more motivated.
Yeah.
But this was a big win for the Green Bay Packers, Charlton, over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL this year. Turnover haven is what we had at Lambeau and allowed Green Bay to stay in this game. Jameis Winston just looks like he doesn't have focus right now as the Tampa Bay quarterback. Dirk Cutter may be without a job in Tampa Bay after the end of this year, Charlton, the head coach.
Yeah.
But, if Green Bay can hang in the next couple of weeks, Aaron Rodgers would be back, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's what they're all hoping for, is that they're sitting at 8-6 when Rodgers gets healthy and he's back in the lineup.
It's always good to make a run when you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback. Also, the Ravens go to 7-5 with a beatdown of the Lions 6-5. I know Matt Stafford got knocked out of that game. That game was Sunday at 1 o'clock on Fox Sports with Tom Brenneman, Chris Spielman, and Peter Shager with the play-by-play. More important than Stafford being injured, I look at how the Ravens, this is probably the best team that's not that good, if that makes any sense, because they're 7-5. But they're not 24 points better than the Lions. But I want to ask you, was it a kind of a bad omen when the Lions couldn't even blow up their old stadium? They see the Pontiac Silvertone, your thoughts?
Well, that was a part of their offensive performance. They were offensive and not being able to implode the stadium.
They used fireworks.
has fooled people the past couple of weeks. He's seemed motivated to play quarterback in the NFL all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And the offense has responded. We always know that the Ravens have had a tremendous defense.
Yeah.
That's been their MO over their time since being in Baltimore. But right now, the offense has seemed to click for the past couple of weeks, Charlton.
Yep.
Can they keep that going, though? That's the main thing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Big C. I want to bring you to another game, and I want to get your thoughts on some shenanigans that went on. It was the Patriots 23-3 over the Bills. They go to 10-2. Buffalo falls to 6-6. Tyrod Taylor's out with an injury. But that game was Sunday, 1 o'clock on CBS Sports. The great Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson with the play-by-play. And I look at the Patriots' 17th consecutive winning seasons. This is a team they've dominated Buffalo, but Buffalo got them last year also in a game against the great Tom Brady was not in that game. But give me your thoughts on the shenanigans that went on with their tight end, the all-pro tight end, that decided to go in and jump on a player who was on the ground. And then his excuse was, he said, I'm sorry, but he says, hey, a lot of things keep happening to me, and what am I supposed to do? Well, you ask Bill Belichick what you're supposed to do and not retaliate in the game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's what you have officials for, to make the calls. They can't make all the calls in the game, Charlton. I mean, you think about a defensive lineman saying, well, I get grabbed every play. Okay?
Yeah.
He's not turning around, elbowing an offensive lineman in the back of the head.
No.
I take this totally back to a black and white scenario, Charlton, and it's just that simple, like we were watching black and white television.
Yeah.
In Denver, 2 weeks ago, Talib and Crabtree.
Yeah.
These are two players that are in a fisticuffs, okay?
Yeah.
Fighting. All right? They didn't attack one another from behind while it was laying on the ground, Charlton, diving in like you're coming off the top rope in a WWE competition.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't see that.
No.
What Gronkowski, and they got a 2-game suspension, Charlton.
Yeah.
2 games.
Yeah.
All right? What Gronkowski did was a malicious act.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
It was premeditated that I'm going to go and inflict punishment on this guy. This is where hockey rules need to come into the NFL, Charlton, because this player now is under concussion protocol, which means he has to miss 2 weeks.
Yep.
Gronkowski gets a 1-game suspension, okay? The DB gets a 2-week concussion protocol. The NFL should adapt the NHL rules, Charlton.
Yeah.
If you cause a player to miss a game, okay, because of a penalty, and you get penalized for it, you have to miss as much time that he misses.
That would make a lot of sense.
1 game, 2 or 3 games, you're going to miss the equal amount of games, Charlton, until he's able to play again.
Yeah.
This is when the NFL talks about protecting its players. And the sad part about it, everyone knew the maliciousness of what Gronkowski did.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't get ejected from the game.
No.
Talib and Crabtree got ejected.
Right away.
Okay?
Yeah.
He attacks a defensive player on the ground.
Yeah.
And they keep him in the game. All right? So this is an egregious act by the officials in this incident, as much as it is by Gronkowski, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because they had no problem ejecting the black players from the game, Charlton. But Gronkowski got a pass because he said, well, everybody's picking on him. This is no different than when Shaquille O'Neal was in the NBA, Charlton. He was bigger than everybody else at his position.
Yep.
So players fouled him continuously.
Yep.
But Shaq didn't turn around and hit players and attack players.
Nope.
He just went through the free throw line and missed free throws. That's all.
That's understandable. That's funny. He did miss a couple of free throws when he went to the free throw line, but he always had the class not to retaliate and cost his team. And I want to look at the Bears and the 49ers. I recall being back in Chicago, I think it was 1988, 89, and the temperature was like minus 17 degrees with the wind chill. It was Joe Montana when they went back and played the Bears, and the 49ers beat them in the Windy City. And now you have Garoppolo going in, starting for the 49ers. They get a 15-14 win over the Bears. The Niners go to 2-10. The Bears fall to 3-9. That game was Sunday, 1 o'clock on CBS Sports. It was Andrew Kettelong and Jave Lofton. Let me get your thoughts. It's not that Garoppolo set the world on fire, but he did get a win in the Windy City where the 49ers often tend to win. Just give me your thoughts. Do they think they found their guy? I know they have a lot of issues down there in San Francisco. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, this game is looked at from 2 perspectives, okay?
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo, in his first start as a 49ers quarterback, could not muster a touchdown for this team.
I know.
This game was won by Robbie Gould, the ex-Bears kicker with 5 field goals, okay?
Yeah.
And so the jury's out on Garoppolo. So let's not become elated about them. But then on the other side, Charlton, when you look at the Bears, okay, This kid, what's his name? Trubisky, that
Yep.
they drafted number 2 overall in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Charlton, he's completing a paltry 1.2 yards per pass attempt in the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
1.2 yards for every pass attempt. That's what he's averaging.
Yeah.
That is pathetic. And you say this guy was the best quarterback. Excuse me, your buddy Mel Kiper never retired.
Hey, you gotta call Mel for that one, okay? They should call Mel Kiper, ask him again, was it live or was it Memorex, Big C?
Yeah, so when you sit there and you're evaluating quarterbacks, Todd McShay and Mel Kiper,
Yeah.
then Mitch Trubisky was the best available quarterback in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
He's averaging 1.2 yards a pass.
And Colin Kaepernick can't find a job on a roster, and he's getting beat up by guys that average 1.2 yards. Is that what you said, Big C?
1.2 yards. Okay, Charlton, 1.2 yards. Let's be realistic. Let's give him a better statistic.
Yeah.
He's averaging 3 feet per pass attempt.
Yeah, that's something else, Big C. Hey, well, sometimes it's pretty windy. It's hard to throw the ball up north. But the thing is, he has an NFL job. And we want everyone to succeed. Everybody, if you can make it, great. But for all the pundits and the experts that said that Colin Kaepernick wasn't good enough to play in the NFL, and here's a guy that when they gave him a chance was averaging about 400 yards a game on the ground and through the air, Big C, but he can't be the guy who gets 1.2 yards per pass. I just think that's a joke. I do want to get on the Chargers. I love those solid blue uniforms with white helmets. They go to 6-6 on the season. They beat the Browns, who fall to 0-11, actually 0-12 now, a 19-10 win in Southern California Sunday, a 4:05 kickoff on CBS Sports. Spero Dedes and Adam Archuleta had the play-by-play. Give me your thoughts. The Chargers had a closer win than we expected them to have, but they do go to 6-6 in the three-way tie in the AFC West. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they're the AFC West champions. That's what the Chargers are right now. We can name them that. Phillip Rivers in his last 3 games, Charlton, has amassed over 1,200 yards.
Wow.
He is playing lights-out football.
Yeah.
And so their defense has gotten healthy.
Yep.
So you got a red-hot Phillip Rivers, a veteran quarterback. Now, Phillip Rivers was drafted the same year Eli Manning was. Matter of fact, they went 1-2.
Yeah.
But no one is saying Phillip Rivers is washed up.
No.
And Phillip Rivers, he's not the most nimble of quarterbacks. He's probably the least nimble quarterback of all starters in the NFL.
Yeah.
But, this is a guy who is so intelligent, who understands what defenses do. You got to realize when he left college football at North Carolina State, Charlton, and he still holds it,
Yep.
the NCAA record for starts for a quarterback in college. And he's done the same thing productivity-wise since he's been in the NFL. And so he has this team with a lot of confidence.
Yep.
He has a defense that knows that Phillip Rivers will get them points, Charlton.
Yeah, they have a very good-looking team down there in Carson, California. I look at the Raiders. The Oakland Raiders go to 6-6 on the season with a 24-17 win over the Giants. And I know, McAdoo lost his job. The Giants fired him. It's amazing. They fired the coach for being 2-10 on the season after benching Eli Manning, but they hit a kicker, Josh Brown, who beat his wife over 20 times, and they say the Mara family has a lot of class. I don't know if you call that class or not, Big C. The game was Sunday at 4:25 kickoff on Fox Sports. Kenny Albert, Rondé Barber, and Christina Pink with the play-by-play. I know the Raiders are in a 3-way tie with the Chargers and also the Chiefs, but for a team that can't beat the Giants when they have all their internal issues, and I love the way that they gave the ball to beast mode and he had a 51-yard touchdown run. I just don't see something's missing. They didn't have Crabtree, but they did have some receivers that were hungry, and the Raiders prevail in a game that they easily could have lost as well. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was a game, Charlton, that no one seemed to want to win.
Yeah.
But they came out. The Giants didn't have anything to win the game with.
No.
I don't think they would have won the game even with Eli Manning at quarterback, Charlton, because he didn't possess more mobility than what the kid did, Smith, at quarterback.
Yeah.
The Raiders, got good on the day that they needed to get good to stay in the playoff chase.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little too late, Charlton, for them because they're not playing consistent enough football. You think about it, they barely squeaked by the Giants.
Yeah.
One of the worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah. In the black hole, and that's a game you would think they'd win by at least 10 points, a touchdown and a half or whatever, but the Raiders have their own issues, and I know that'll be figured out more and more as they get to the point where I think 3 of their last of the last 3 games, I think 2 of those last 3 are on the road too, Big C. That's going to be tough for them. I want to go down south with the Saints that go to 9-3 on the season with a big win in their division versus the Carolina Panthers, 31-21. The Panthers fall to 8-4. That game was Sunday at 4:25 on Fox Sports, and they had the Joe Buck with Aikman and also Andrews with the play-by-play. Just your thoughts on that matchup with Cam Newton and versus your good old boy that never likes to throw for anything less than 300 yards in Drew Brees. Big C, your thoughts?
The who dat, Charles.
The who dat Saint. Yeah.
You know, you think about what the Saints are doing. The Saints are doing it the conventional way in the NFL right now, Charlton. They have such a dominant running game with Kamara and Ingram, Charlton, is that they've alleviated so much pressure from Drew Brees.
Yeah.
And it makes the game easier for him now. You think about it, the game, ironically, for the Saints is slowed down. You know, you think about that in the NFL, that the game is slowed down for one of the greatest passers in NFL history.
Yeah.
And that's because he's not asked to throw the ball 40 times a game now, Charlton.
No.
And when he wants to throw the ball, his play action is so strong with this running game that they have. You know, they're averaging 170 yards a game rushing.
Yeah.
That's one of the top rushing attacks in the NFL. And so when you have the linebackers having to stay closer to the line of scrimmage, the defensive backs can't bail out as quick, Charlton.
Yep.
It has really opened it up when Drew Brees decides to throw the football. But Kamara and Ingram have been the real true story of the Saints. They're playing tremendous defense for the first time since they won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
But that running game, Charlton, is what has catapulted them to the top of the division this year.
Yeah, they're looking very, very good, Big C, especially when they're playing down in the Dome. I want to get you to the Rams on the West Coast. They go to 9-3 with a win over the Cardinals, which fall to 5-7, and it was 32-16 Sunday, a 4:25 kickoff on Fox Sports. The great Chris Myers, Daryl Johnson, and Laura Oakland with the play-by-play. What I've noticed about the Rams is, Big C, they have a team that can put points. They're back to their scoring ways. I know they had that beat down at Minnesota where they couldn't score more than a touchdown and a half, but this is a game they have to win against the Cardinals that are old and beaten up, but Philadelphia is coming to town next week. Your thoughts on the Rams? And I'm impressed with the win they had over their division rival, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the Rams, they're auditioning right now to be the best team in the NFL coming next week. That's what they're doing. They had a great show, a great team victory against the Arizona down in the desert.
Yep.
But it shows that this offense is well balanced. When you look at what McVay is doing with the quarterback golf, Charlton, he has the play action, but the play action this year is working because you have your running back running the ball. You know, what they didn't have last year, Charlton, they didn't have a running game. But this year they have a running game, and which has helped the young quarterback develop. And so with Gurley running the ball the way he did as a rookie, Charlton, and now this opens up all the lanes and options for golf.
Yep.
They've always had one of the best defensive lines in football, Charlton. They can really get after people.
Yep.
They upgraded the offensive line. Gurley became young again, Charlton, back to his rookie standards.
Yep.
And Jared Goff has been the one who has reaped the benefits of it. Now, you're really going to find out this week because this is an audition over the next couple of weeks for the MVP of the NFL. We had one last night in Seattle.
Yep.
We're going to have another one this week in L.A., and can Carson Wentz avoid the late season woes, Charlton?
Well, we said it would be coming. In fact, you said they're rolling along, but it was going to happen where they ran up against a buzzsaw defense, and it happened up in the great Northwest. It was a great environment. There's something about that 12th man in Seattle, whether they get back to the Super Bowl or not. You're hard-pressed to find a fan base that has as much noise and impact on a game, because when you audible, you got to go to hand signals, and they can start reading that stuff. I look at the Eagles last night running up against the Seattle. Now, Seattle was favored like in 41 straight games, Big C. They lost a couple of games this year to Washington in a game that I don't understand how they lost that game. And then the Atlanta game they lost as well, but they missed 4 field goals combined in those 2 losses, 1 against Atlanta and 3 against the Redskins. I look at the Eagles last night. They were favored to beat Seattle at Seattle, which is always stupid when you're favored to beat that team up there, but a 24-10 beatdown of the Eagles. And I look at the Houdini in the backfield as Russell Wilson. This guy, he doesn't have an offensive line. They need to get some of those guys from the University of Washington to play on the offensive line for him. They can at least pass protect for him. That game was Sunday, 8:25 kickoff, NBC Sports. The great Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, and Michelle Tafoya. Give me your impression. We saw Carson Wentz, and we saw the much heralded Russell Wilson, And they both had good games, but Wilson got the win without a defense, or actually without an offensive line blocking for him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the true question marks now are coming up to the Philadelphia Eagles. They have 2 losses on the season, okay?
Yeah.
People say, wow, they still got the best record in the NFL. But both of those losses, Charlton, came against teams with winning records.
Yeah.
That's what you face in the playoffs, teams with winning records.
Yeah.
You have to know how to beat them. Now, you can beat up on the teams without the winning records all year long. That's what you're expected to do.
Yeah.
And that's what Philadelphia's done all year long, Charlton. Beat teams without winning records. But they lost to Kansas City. Kansas City was red hot.
Yeah.
They come into Seattle. Seattle has always been a good team at home, and they're second in their division. And so they lose to them. They go on the road this week, Charlton, and they play the Rams.
Yeah.
Now, if they lose to the Rams in this coming week, Charlton, we know something about the Eagles. They
Yeah.
are not who everybody thought they were.
Yeah.
And they will falter real quickly. But Russell Wilson, Charlton, showed his mettle last night.
Houdini.
I mean, he's done it all year long. But, here's a guy, for the first time in NFL history, who's accounted for 8 out of every 10 yards that his team has gained.
Wow.
8.5 actually for every 8.5 out of every 10 yards that his team has gained on the season.
Yeah.
That's never been done before.
No.
And so when you talk about MVP candidates, I know people don't talk about it. Everybody wants Wentz to be the MVP. But Russell Wilson showed the vulnerability of a Carson Wentz last night.
Yeah.
Is that if you get after this guy and he has to play from behind, he is not steady Eddie as he's been against the losing teams, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's the biggest difference. Russell Wilson, everybody looked at him. He had no running game.
Nope.
He had no help.
No.
He had to run around, scramble, find open receivers because his offensive line was watching him.
Yeah.
So, this is the best player in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
And they showed the Eagles last night, when you're on the road and you play a team with a winning record, you're very vulnerable.
And, I think about when I saw the game last night, and I love that stadium. I think it's so electric up there in the Great Northwest. And it's amazing they have all the Canadian flags that are in there, too, because that's the closest team to the Canadian border, at least out here. But I look at what I saw last night. I saw Wilson playing the way he's always played, Big C. And what was missing was a Colin Kaepernick type of performance from the Eagles, because I know Wentz had a decent game. They were behind, so he had to throw the ball a lot, and they had a couple of good passes. But they only got 1 touchdown, and he fumbled at the goal line. But I look at how well Wilson played. And I keep hearing the knock on Kaepernick is that, well, he's a running quarterback. We need someone who can stand in the pocket. It's because Wilson's so good outside of the pocket. He and Colin Kaepernick were that way to each other when they were playing against each other. And the fact that Wilson is still playing and Cap's not is a joke, because he's a little bit smaller and slower version of Colin Kaepernick. Big C, can you draw that same conclusion?
Well, Charlton, nobody said that, Steve Young was a pure pocket passer, because he was a highly mobile quarterback when he played the game, ran around all over the place. Randall Cunningham was that same type of quarterback, Charlton. One of the things about a quarterback, the situation about Colin Kaepernick, they will always find excuses for him not to play.
Oh, yeah.
Teams have proven in the NFL that we're willing to lose other than admit that this man was right about what he was standing for. We give the players $100 million other than admitting what Colin Kaepernick stood for, social injustice.
Yeah.
And he was right for doing that.
Yeah.
So the NFL, regardless of, it's not a money thing with the NFL. They don't care.
No.
It's about protecting what they say is a good old boy network. This is what we believe, and nobody is bigger than what we are.
Yeah.
And that's the stance that they're always going to take with Colin Kaepernick. You could have a team lose 3 quarterbacks in a weekend, Charlton.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick won't get a call.
Yeah.
He will not get a call.
You said
because they don't care about winning. If it's about doing the right thing in the NFL.
And you said Trubisky, #1 pick for Chicago's averaging 1.5 yards a pass. What did you say, 1.5 yards?
1.2, okay?
Oh, wow.
Trubisky is averaging 3 feet per pass in the NFL. And he was the #1 pick overall out of North Carolina, #2 overall pick.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the #1 overall pick, there was Myles Garrett that was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. You and I talked about him, Charlton.
Yeah.
He would be another Courtney Brown that the Browns had drafted #1 overall about 15 years ago out of Penn State. He and Kenyatta Carter went 1 and 2. Kenyatta went to the Bengals as a running back. Courtney Brown has been body slammed so many times this year. He thought he was in the WWE.
WWE, yeah, that's funny. And you're right about the a lot of the things when it comes to the Good Old Boy Network. When Trump says fire the SOBs, but he's going to put a sexual predator in office, it doesn't make any sense. I want to touch on the final game, Big C. Tonight's game, a great game, potentially wise. Monday Night Football. The Steelers 9-2 at the Bengals 5-6. And it's an 8:30 kickoff. ESPN, Mike Tirico, John Gruden, Lisa Salters with the play-by-play. I look at Antonio Brown, which I think is the best receiver in the AFC. Big Ben's throwing the ball well. They have the running games going with Le'Veon Bell. And I know you look at the Bengals, they have A.J. Green, but they're going up against a team that can play football. Andy Dalton's going to be pressed hard tonight to try to have success against that Steelers defense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Ben in his entire career, Charlton, has only lost 3 games in Cincinnati throughout his career. He's only lost 5 games in the state of Ohio throughout his career. But, this is a game that Antonio Brown is a little nicked, and it's going to be a game-time decision whether he plays or not. But also, Charlton, between these two teams, only one time since 1996 they haven't had a personal foul penalty in these games. So we know we're going to see some laundry out on the field tonight between these two teams. And, with Vontaze Burfict playing, who knows what may happen.
Well, they'll just call it the terrible towels. They'll say, no, that came from the stands, because the Steelers have a lot of terrible towels up there. But that should be a fantastic game at defensively. I want to close out on your thoughts. Tiger Woods back in golf now, and he finished at the tie for 9th. 8 under in his own tournament. The purse was $3.5 million. Even though he didn't win, I think he shows that. Give him 3 or 4 golf tournaments to get back into the swing of things. I think Tiger Woods is going to be competitive in golf, and I know he's going to win more majors as long as he stays healthy. Big C, your thoughts on Tiger Woods and his impact on the golfing world, Big C, the golf universe?
Well, Charlton, Tiger made golf relevant in the middle of a football season playoff race, okay?
Yeah.
That's what he did.
He did.
In the bowl championship race in college football and the playoff race in the NFL, Tiger Woods made golf relevant.
Yeah.
He had 3 consecutive, subpar rounds shooting in the 60s.
Yeah.
That's something that no one ever expected from Tiger to come back and do again. He imploded on Sunday, where he shot in the 70s.
Yeah.
But, you think about what he did for the world of those who say, I can do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right?
Yep.
But that's what Tiger did. I mean, the average fan sitting up watching an NFL game, no, he can't go out there and play, all right?
No.
He can't put on a uniform, can't decide which way the shoulder pads go.
That's true.
The average fan is not going to go out there and dunk a basketball.
No.
He's not going to compete against LeBron James.
No.
But the average fan can sit there and say, Tiger can bring me back to reality.
Yeah.
I can buy a set of sticks and go out there and swing them.
Yeah.
I can be competitive. That's what Tiger Woods did. He invoked that little kid and everybody all over again. You think about the athletes who have resonated and changed sports over time, Charlton, in the past 4 decades.
Yeah.
You think about that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had a shot that nobody else could emulate.
This guy, right? Yep.
Magic Johnson came in and changed the face of the big guard in the NBA.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan evolutionized the game, Charlton, took it to new heights.
Yep.
In baseball, we had Barry Bonds set an all-time home run record, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when we look at golf and what Tiger Woods did for the minorities in the world, not just golf, but for the minorities in the world, Tiger opened Pandora's box and said that the minorities can dominate in this sport given an opportunity, where they were ostracized for so many years.
Yeah.
He embraced multiculturalism in a sport that had been pale and lily white, Charlton.
Yeah.
And Tiger Woods opened up the eyes of little boys and girls, said, I can be. All right?
Yeah.
I can be as an individual. I can be as good as anybody in the world. And Tiger Woods opened up that hope for everybody, Charlton.
Well, Big C, he definitely opened up the hope, and I think he's going to be around for a long time if he can stay healthy, and I think he will. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bondini Brown. He was Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, the hammers have started to fall in the NFL on the head coaching jobs. But what I'm wondering about, will Tennessee ever fill their head coaching position? and maybe on the way by, you talked about Jimbo Fisher.
Yep.
Maybe he dropped a few dollars out of the plane, Charlton, and signing a 10-year guaranteed $75 million contract with Texas A&M.
Yeah.
When you look at the landscape of the SEC,
yeah,
everybody is pumping money into their programs trying to compete against Nick Saban.
Yeah.
But, there's only one St. Nick, Charlton.
Yeah, there's really only one St. Nick, and I hope he has enough energy left in him for a Christmas delivery of presents, Big C. When you want to have Christmas, find it every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network. Voted the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. We always want to tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no woman should have to deal with that garbage all on her own. And as we tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.